Hello, my name is Emily, and I work as a home helper. I quietly slip into the corners of other people's lives, cleaning, doing laundry. Sometimes chatting just a bit. It may seem like a small thing, but to me, it's a deeply meaningful job. That day, I was sent to visit a 68-year-old man named Frank, living alone. The agency had only told me, he's struggling to keep up with housework. But the moment the door opened, I understood exactly what that meant. A heavy, musty air leaked out from inside. It was a strange mixture of dampness and something sweet and decaying. As I stepped in, the floor crunched softly beneath my shoes, dust clinging to every surface. The kitchen sink overflowed with stacked takeout containers and moldy dishes. And a thick stench rose from the drain. This is the home of someone whose heart has worn out. That thought came to me instantly. Frank greeted me with an apologetic smile. I tied on my soft pink apron and bowed. "I'm here to help with the cleaning," I said. Even I was surprised by the warmth in my voice. He didn't speak. He sat on the sofa, just watching me in silence. As I put on my gloves and started the water, he looked like a child left behind, quiet and forgotten. And I decided not to speak unless he did first. I began washing the mountain of dishes one by one. I scrubbed away the hardened grease, tossed the cracked bowls, and wiped the counter. Every splash and clink seemed to cleanse the air just a little. At one point, I felt his gaze. When I turned, Frank was watching me, intently. His eyes weren't blank, they were following my movements carefully. And when I crouched down to clean under the cupboard, I noticed his gaze settle on my hips. My back straightened instinctively, but I wasn't offended. Instead, I thought, this man still longs for human warmth. And strangely, that made me feel a little glad. When I finished and turned to leave, I smiled gently. "Well then, I'll see you next week." He gave a small nod. And for a moment, I thought I saw something soften in his expression. On the third visit, everything began as usual. Apron tied, gloves on, bell rung. After I finished the day's cleaning, Frank suddenly said,
"Would you like a cup of tea before you go?"
It was just instant green tea, but the rising steam felt oddly comforting. I nodded, and we sat across from each other at the small table. I asked softly, "Have you lived alone for a long time?" Frank looked down, then answered.
"It's been 3 years since my wife passed."
His voice carried a quiet tremble. His fingers around the teacup shook ever so slightly. "She must have been a wonderful person," I said. He looked into the cup and murmured,
"She did everything. Cooking, cleaning. I didn't know how much I relied on her until she was gone."
The silence between us turned heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was full of feelings that didn't need words. I didn't press him. Instead, I simply whispered, "I understand. I, too, had been married once. But we divorced 10 years ago. My child had since moved out, and we only spoke every now and then. Maybe that's why I do this work," I said. "I like being close to someone's everyday life. It reminds me I can still be of use to someone." For a moment, Frank's expression wavered. He didn't cry, he didn't smile, but something in his heart had stirred, of that I was sure. When I left, the sky had darkened and heavy rain had started falling. By the time I reached the station, I was soaked. Taxis were nowhere to be found. Without thinking too much, I turned around and rang Frank's bell once more. He opened the door in surprise, then quickly stepped aside to let me in.
"You're soaked. Come inside, quickly."
I was dripping from head to toe. My hair clung to my cheeks, my apron and blouse were wet and stuck to my skin. And a little puddle formed at my feet.
"You can use the shower if you'd like."
I hesitated just a second, then replied with a small smile. "If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it." As I let the warm water wash over me, I kept thinking about his eyes. So quiet, so sincere, so lonely. Wrapped in a bath towel, I changed into his offered t-shirt and sweatpants. When I came back to the living room, Frank had just finished boiling water. He turned, looked at me, and said shyly,
"You look good in that."
My cheeks flushed. We sat on the sofa side by side. From my damp hair rose the faint scent of soap. Frank reached out gently, his hand brushing my shoulder. I didn't move away. I didn't speak. Then, his hand moved slowly to my chest. And he asked in a whisper,
"Is this really okay?"
I closed my eyes and nodded, unable to say a word. He was warm, and his touch was tender, achingly so. Without another word, I loosened the drawstring on the sweatpants. And we moved together, silently, to the bed. That night remains vivid in my memory. Not wild or rushed, but slow, deep, and quietly intimate. We weren't in love, we were simply two lonely people who needed to be held. If not for that moment, we might both still be trapped in our own silence. That's how powerful a single act of warmth can be. The following week, I returned. Apron tied, gloves on, smile ready. Frank greeted me at the door with a calm voice.
Good afternoon. Shall we get started?
We acted as if nothing had changed. But something had, something quiet and unspoken. While I was vacuuming, Frank asked from behind.
Do you regret what happened that night?
Without turning around, I answered softly. No, not at all. That was enough. No more words were needed. Since then, we've shared tea after each visit. We smile without speaking. There is comfort in that silence. One afternoon, as I packed up, Frank looked at me and said quietly,
Would you see me, even if it's not for cleaning?
I paused, then smiled. Well then, how about we grab tea together next time? His shy, boyish grin at that moment, it warmed something deep inside me. People can begin again, even at 68, even after grief. Frank reminded me of that. And as I tie my apron and ring another doorbell today, I carry that quiet memory in my heart, of one man, one home, and the gentle rebirth of two lives.